welcome back to my channel. So because of our move, I've been spending a lot of time at IKEA, and while we were looking through the curtain section the other day, I jokingly was like, oh, I love these curtains, but if I get these, I think I might make them into a sundress at midnight, like in a fit of rage or something. And then I looked at the fabric more and I said, you know what, these would actually make a really, really, really great sundress. So I bought them and here they are. I think they're really pretty. And they're super lightweight and they have a really light pattern on them, and I thought it would just be really, really darling for a sundress. But because they are pretty sheer, I also have this lining fabric here, and this is just some leftover white fabric. I think it's from the Orson Iris skirt, and I'm going to use that as the lining for this dress. But if you don't feel like using curtains for this project, you could totally use just a regular fabric. I'd recommend probably like 2 yards. And then for the lining, probably just another 1.5 yards or so. So this dress is going to have a really pretty bodice. It's going to be like all ruffled, and it's going to have a rounded neckline. And then it's going to have a cute ruffle detail at the waist. And then it's going to have some more ruffles on the bottom. And then for the back, I'm also going to do a shirred back so that there's no zipper, and it should be really easy to get on and off. And I think it'll just be like really cute and casual for summer. So I'm really, really pumped about it. And yeah, I think that is everything. So let's get cutting out these pieces. So the nice thing about this fabric is because it is super lightweight and has a pretty loose weave to it, it's super, super easy to rip. And because most of these pieces are rectangles, it was super easy to just put one little notch at the measurement I needed and rip the fabric all the way down to get all of my pieces. So I pretty much did that for the skirt pieces, the ruffle pieces, and everything else that I could do it with. And it just made the whole cutting process really, really simple and easy. And for this project, you are just going to need a ton of ruffles, so it definitely makes it go a lot faster. So the first pieces I have here are the bodice front lining pieces. So the one on the left is the center, and the one on the right is the side piece. And you're just going to cut these out of your lining fabric for this project. Next up here, we have the side piece and the back piece. And the side piece is only out of your lining, but the back one you're going to cut one out of your fabric and your lining fabric. This right here is the front piece, and it's just a big rectangle because we're going to need to do a special technique to get that cute little gathering detail on it. This that I'm showing you here is just a really long strip that I cut out, and you're going to cut 2 of these because we want to have really, really long straps for this. And then this piece here is our big skirt piece, and you're going to cut 2 of these. This is what gives it so much ruffle because it's so big. I love it. And then these are all of the ruffle pieces, and you're going to cut 4 of these ones. And then this skirt piece here is the lining skirt, and we're going to make this one a circle skirt so this skirt won't be too big at our waist. And that is all the pieces for this project. Okay, the construction for this dress is going to be a little bit different than like I typically do because I really want it to have a really cute like ruffled front. So the first thing we're going to do is assemble all of the lining pieces. So I'm going to take our center piece and sew the 2 side pieces to it first. So I'm just going to attach one side piece to either side of the front piece and sew them together. Once those are sewn, we are going to take our side pieces next, and the side that slants in is the side we're going to attach to the side piece here. So I'm just going to take one and sew it to either side. And now you should have most of your bodice lining done. Also, you guys, Sophia's serving up some good puppy content. Look at this cutie. Now comes the kind of interesting part of putting this together because I honestly am not totally sure how I'm going to do this yet. But we're going to take this super extra long front piece that we cut out. That's just a big rectangle right now. And across the top and bottom edge, I'm going to put 2 parallel basting stitches so we can start gathering this piece up. I also decided to change out my bobbin really quickly for a color I'm not using at the moment, just so we can save up on white thread so we won't have to rewind it so many times. And now we're going to start gathering this piece up by pulling on 2 of the basting stitches that are on the same side of the fabric, and you're going to gather this until it is the same size as our lining bodice. And now that the ruffles are all evenly spaced, I'm going to make them as straight as I can, and I'm going to take this to the iron to make them lay nice and flat. Alright, and now that these have been ironed, I'm going to take our lining piece and I'm going to put these pieces pretty side to pretty side, and I'm going to just make sure that the top of the lining piece is nice and flat, and I'm going to pin and sew all across the top edge, connecting it to the ruffled layer. And now we can turn this right side out and you should have all the ruffles on your bodice. I also just turned the piece over to the back and I'm going to trim down all of these edges. And now to make this piece lay a little bit flatter at the top seam, I'm going to lay this open like this, and I'm going to push all of the raw edges towards the lining piece, and I'm going to top stitch on the lining piece to hold all of the raw edges to that side. But the very top corners are pretty difficult to reach, so I'm probably going to have to start and stop a few times when sewing across this. I flipped the piece to the back again, and once again we want to make this lay as flat as we can, and then this time we're going to sew across the bottom of this with a basting stitch. So I'm going to start by laying down the center nice and flat and pinning that in place. And then I'm going to pin the edges and then the middles, because obviously this piece is flat and this piece is flat, but right here this seam is not. So we're just going to do our best to make this all lay nicely. And now it should look like this. This bodice is looking good and the technique seems to be working so far, so I hope that it turns out. And we're going to put it to the side for a minute and we are going to work on sewing some straps for the dress. So we're going to make these into little bow straps. So we have these two very, very long pieces and I'm going to just fold them in half and sew down one side. And then I'm going to cut these pieces in half and turn these right side out. Now that our straps are done, I'm going to take two, and at the peak of the curves here, I'm just going to sew one onto either side. And I'm not going to sew on the back straps just quite yet. Now we are again going to put the front to the side for just a minute and grab the back pieces. The first thing I'm going to do to the back pieces is I'm literally just going to put these pretty side to pretty side and sew right across the top here. And now we're going to bring the front piece back, and I'm going to open up the back piece we just sewed, and I'm going to line up the top seam here with the top of the front piece, and I'm going to put this pretty side to pretty side, pin them together, and then I'm going to take the lining piece and make it go down the other side. So essentially the front piece right now is just sandwiched between the two layers of the back piece, and I'm going to connect the other side of the back piece to the other side of the front piece and do this the exact same way as well. And now we can flip this all to the right side and we should have a very big bodice right now. But it is fully lined. And this is where we're going to attach those other straps. So I'm just going to take the other two, and these ones I'm going to cut to be a little bit smaller than the front ones because I actually want to tie these in the back. Oh, it's so cute! To make sure that this piece will lay nice and flat when we're wearing it and not like poof out like this, because this has a very light stripe pattern, I'm just going to do some straight stitches directly down those stripes to hold this fabric against the lining piece and make it just lay a little bit nicer when we're wearing it. So this is how our bodice is looking so far, and don't worry, it should be super gigantic on you right now. And next we are going to start sewing up the lining skirt. And again, the whole process for like attaching the skirts on this project is going to be like really weird and kind of like nothing I've ever done before. But stick with me because I think it should work. So here is our lining skirt, and I made the top edge super big so that would match our really big bodice. But I actually made mine a little bit too big, so I'm just going to lay the bottom of the bodice nice and flat, and then I'm going to line up the skirt with it and mark where I want to sew it so that it'll fit perfectly into the waist. And now I'm just going to start from here and sew all the way down the side of the skirt. And I was able to make my circle skirt one continuous piece, but if you had to cut yours into two pieces, just sew down both side seams. And this is the stuff that's going to be a little bit confusing and weird. So I turned the bodice to the wrong side right now, and I'm going to take our skirt and I'm going to sew these two pieces wrong sides together right now. So I'm just going to match up the seams and sew these together. And this is what our dress is looking like so far. So our waist is a totally raw edge and we just have the lining. And now we're going to take the rectangle skirt pieces and I'm going to sew these together down either side seam. I also zigzagged down the raw edges after I had sewn them to help with the fraying. And now that these have been sewn together, I'm going to fold down the top edge about 1.5 inches, and I'm going to put 2 parallel basting stitches across this top edge here. we are going to take our skirt piece, and I'm going to pin the side seams first to the bodice piece, making sure that the side with the raw edge is facing in towards the bodice. And then I'm also going to find the center of both the skirt and the bodice pieces and also pin those together in each section. And sectioning out all the pieces like this just helps to make all of the ruffles as even as possible. And now we can start pulling on the basting stitches to gather up these ruffles. And then I'm going to evenly space out these ruffles and pin them down. And you want to pin them right on top of the seam we sewed the lining skirt to the bodice. And now I'm going to top stitch all across this ruffle about 1/2 inch away from the top edge of the ruffle. And now comes the fun part of finally taking out all of these basting stitches. This dress is looking literally so cute. I'm so excited about it. And now it's time to finish up the issue of it being way, way, way too big in the back. And the way we're going to fix this up is by using a technique called shirring. And to do this technique, all you're going to need is some really thin elastic thread. And I will link this one that I bought. I bought a really big one because I used to do this technique a lot and it takes a lot of elastic. You can also find it in like smaller rolls at like Joann's and stuff. But you're going to want to take your elastic and put it onto a bunch of bobbin spools just by winding it by hand, because if you do it on a machine, it makes it too tight and it stretches out the elastic. So you just want to make a bunch of bobbins like this. So I'm going to remove the bobbin from my machine and replace it with the elastic bobbin. And putting it in can be a little bit tricky sometimes because it doesn't want to like properly wind it through the mechanism. So you just have to really make sure that it is wound properly, otherwise this won't really work. So I'm going to leave the top thread of my machine as a regular thread, and then you're just going to sew a bunch of straight lines all across the back section of the dress, and once the elastic is sewn through, it'll start to gather up the back. And like I said, we're only going to do this along the back panel of the dress. And now we need to take this section of the dress to the iron. Now when you're doing the shirring technique, it's really, really important that you iron it out once you're done sewing it. And when you're ironing it, there's a few steps you want to do. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to spray it with a lot of water and get it super wet. And then I'm going to gather up the pieces and scrunch the fabric to tighten it up. And then I'm going to take our hot iron and iron this flat. And this makes the elastic tighten up a little bit more and give us a really nice stretch. And now the dress should finally be starting to come together. Oop, I just stepped on something sharp. And it should be fitting us a lot better now. And I'm also trying it on now because I really wanted to figure out where I want the ruffle to start, because we're still going to put a ruffle along the bottom. So I just put a little notch where I want to cut down this top layer of the skirt so we can start adding the ruffle there. And I'm just going to make this the same length all the way around. And to make the bottom ruffles of the dress, it's pretty much the same exact process as sewing the top part of the skirt. So I'm just going to sew all of the edges of the ruffles together to make them into one continuous loop. And then I am going to again fold over the top edge about 1.5 inches, sew 2 basting stitches all the way across, and then mark out those quadrants, pin it to the skirt, and sew all the way around about 1/2 inch away from the top edge to again get that cute little ruffle detailing here. And now that the ruffle is attached, all that's left to do is just a little hem all the way around the bottom edge of the ruffle. And here is the final dress. Okay, honestly, I keep having to remind myself that this is a curtain. Like, it looks so pretty. This is exactly what I wanted. It's just like such cottagecore vibes. Like, it's just so up my alley. I love it so much. And like I always talk about the twirl factor on my dresses, but this one is also very, very good. I could not stop spinning in it the whole time. It was honestly a little tricky to find footage of me like not spinning in it for some variety, because honestly I was just swishing it around all day. It's such a good time. I really hope you guys liked this video and give this tutorial a try. I really had a lot of fun with this one, so I hope you guys make it and like it just as much as I do. And if you do, please send me a picture on Instagram. I get so excited whenever I see one of your guys' creations. It seriously like makes my day. You guys can also check out my website now. I have that linked in the description, where I will be adding a new pattern to go along with my videos probably really soon. So I hope you guys check that out, and I post new videos every Friday if you want to see more. And I will see you guys next week. Bye!